يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Brothers and sisters in Islam, on this blessed day of this blessed month of Sha'ban, we review our testimony, our shahada to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah alone we worship, and from Him alone we seek refuge, help, and sustenance. And we bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His beloved messenger and the seal of the prophets. As of what follows, all you who believe, have a reminder and reverence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and may not accept in a state of Islam, a state of submission to Him, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, we have to remind ourselves that in order to die in the state of Islam, we have to live in a state of Islam, as none of us knows when his or her time will come. I remind myself and you with the word of wisdom from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He addressed the entire human race, the whole humanity, not just Muslims, not just believers. Ya ayyuhan nas, all folks, all mankind. Revere your Lord. Have a reminder and reverence of your Lord, that Lord of yours who created you all from a single soul. And from that soul created its mate, and from the two of them created a multitude of men and women. And revere Him from whom you demand your mutual rights. Revere the womb that bore you, and never ever cut off family ties. Very Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching all over us. And I remind myself and you, brothers and sisters in Islam, with the word of wisdom from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He addressed the believers. O you who believe, have a reminder and reverence of Allah, and when you speak right to the point, right on target. If you do that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless your deeds and make them wholesome, and will forgive your sins. And whoever obeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His messenger will have attained success and felicity in this life and in the hereafter. And again, we have to ponder on this verse that the key, the recipe to success, it is in obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, following His command, and following on the footsteps of His beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Certain truths are by nature evident and need not to be discussed in normal circumstances. But in today's age, when the most evident truths are shrouded by the clouds of doubt and are questioned, one is forced to discuss even the most obvious of them. And one such truth is a necessity for an aesthetic element of human life, az-zuhd. Without an element of self-denial and asceticism, no religion, and therefore no human culture is possible. One must withdraw occasionally from the full life of the senses, even in order to be able to enjoy the fruits of sensual perception. As the Taoist saying affirms it, it is the empty space in the wheel that makes the wheel. It is the empty space of the wheel that makes the wheel. It is only a certain degree of restraint from the material object of the senses that makes even the life of the senses balanced. Not to speak about making possible opening in the human soul for the spiritual life, an opening for that spiritual dimension. One such practice of restraint is fasting, which is promulgated in Islam as an obligatory for the months of Ramadan and recommended for other periods of the year. As the Holy Quran described it and asserted, it is a practice which existed in all the religions, and in Islam it was only revived and institutionalized in the form of Sawm of Ramadan. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O you who believe, fasting was prescribed unto you like it was prescribed on the people before you. For what reason? Not to hunger or to thirst, but to attain taqwa or protection. Fasting during this month possesses, of course, many social and external benefits and features, which have been discussed a lot with the Muslim Ummah, and in fact, even somewhat overemphasized in certain quarters, where the chief virtue of fasting is reduced to charity towards the poor. This element of charity is, of course, there, but like all true charity, it becomes spiritually significant only when it is directed towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No yet. You are doing the charity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَيَطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. And we have to really think about this. Charity only becomes charity if it's related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells in the Holy Quran, they feed the poor, the orphan, the prisoner for the sake of Allah. And they say, we're only feeding you for the sake of Allah. We don't want anything from you or any reward from you. And in fasting, it is the obeying of the divine will, which has at its root charity toward the poor and the needy and the natural participation of their hunger and thirst. So there is that element, that social element of feeling the hunger and the thirst of the needy and responding with charity. But that charity has to be directed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it to really be genuine and acceptable. But the most difficult aspect of the fast is the edge of the sword of abstention directed toward the carnal soul, the nafs al-ammar. It is that self-restraint, it's curbing the desire of the nafs. That is the most difficult part. In fasting, the rebellious tendencies of the carnal soul are gradually dampened and pacified through a systematic submission of these tendencies to the divine will. For at every moment of hunger, the soul of the Muslim is reminded that it is in order to obey the divine command that the passion of the carnal souls are unheeded. That's why we're fasting. We're fasting not because we cannot find food. We're fasting not because we want to go on a diet. We're fasting because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us to do that so that we may attain taqwa. For at every moment of hunger, the soul of the Muslim is reminded that it is in order to obey the divine command that the passions of the carnal soul go unheeded. That is also why the fast does not include only food, but also abstention from every form of lust and carnal passion. Fasting is just not going hungry or thirsty, but really is elevating the human spirit to an angelic type, where you're not only abstaining from our carnal passions, but also you are trained, disciplined, keeping your cool, keeping your sabr. That's why when a person is fasting and he's provoked, the only thing he says, Allahumma inni sa'im, and then heal off any provocation. As a result of this systematic restraint, the human soul becomes aware that it is independent of its immediate natural environment and conscious that it is in this world, but not of it. A person who fasts with complete faith become aware very rapidly that he is a pilgrim in this world and that he is a creature destined for a goal beyond this material existence. This is very important to us. We have to realize what it is, what's our purpose of this life. Are we here just to eat, drink, sleep, and then we die? And that's it? Or are we destined to a hereafter life, a better life? We have to ask ourselves questions, and we have to answer it. Because otherwise, the world will be a jungle where everybody would want to take as much advantage of the materialistic pleasures of it as possible before one dies. But that's not what humans are all about. And it is in fasting that we realize that. The word about him loses some of its material and gains an aspect of vacuity and transparency, which in the case of the contemplative Muslim lead directly to a contemplation of God in his creation. So, by losing some of this word materialistic feelings or senses, the Muslim gains an aspect of vacuity, something vacant in him, something transparent, something that will lead him to contemplate God through God's creation. The ethereal and empty nature of things is moreover compensated by the appearance of those very things as divine gifts. And then all of a sudden, food and drink, which are taken for granted throughout the year, reveal themselves during the period of fasting more than ever as a divine gift, ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and gain a spiritual significance of sacramental nature. To fast is also to wear the armor of purity against the passions of the world. So protect yourself. كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Taqwa is derived from the word in Arabic which is to protect, protection. So we gain this armor of purity against the passion of the world. So if you are abstaining during the fasting, during the month of Ramadan, from things that are lawful to you, it becomes very easy to abstain in the rest of the year from things that are unlawful to you. One's body to fast is also to wear an armor of purity against the passions of the world. It is to incorporate, even physically, in one's body the purity of death, which is, of course, coupled with spiritual birth. To Muslims, death is the death of the material body, but it's the birth. It's a spiritual birth. And as Brother Imam a couple of weeks ago mentioned to us, we have to be reminding ourselves with that. And here with this spiritual exercise, one embodies the purity of death. In fasting, man is reminded that he has chosen the side of God over the world of passion. During the fasting period, we're fasting for God, and we have abandoned all passions that come with all our carnal flesh. This is why the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he loved fasting. It was a basic element of his prophetic spiritual poverty or faqr. He used to say sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-faqru fakhri, meaning that spiritual poverty is my glory. This death of the passion cleans the human soul and empties it of the putrefied waters with its negative psychic residues. The individual and through him the Islamic community is renovated through this rite and reminded of its moral and spiritual obligations and goal. By fasting, we are reminded who we are. Why are we fasting? What are our obligations? What are our goals? What is our purpose in life? That is why the arrival of the blessed months is greeted with joy all over the Muslim world. For in it to have completed the fast of Ramadan is to have undergone a rejuvenation and rebirth which prepare each Muslim to face another year with determination to live and act according to the divine will. The fast also bestows on the believers a spiritual perfume. That is bestowed, that spiritual perfume is bestowed upon the human soul, and that the fragrance of that perfume can be perceived long after the period of abstinence has come to an end. It provides for the soul a source of energy upon which it feeds throughout the year. The holy months of Ramadan has therefore been called Ash-Shahr al-Mubarak, or the blessed months, one in which the grace or the barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala flows up in the Islamic community and rejuvenates its deepest sources of life and action. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة على من لا نبي بعده. Brothers and sisters, it seems like just yesterday we're paying farewell to the month of Ramadan, and then after that the Hajj came, and now we are in the month of Sha'ban and about to usher the holy month of Ramadan. And in the first khutbah, I reminded myself and you brothers and sisters with the purpose of fasting, with the need of that zuhd, that asceticism in our life, in order to curb our carnal nafs, our carnal souls, our carnal passions. And brothers and sisters, the honorable guest of Ramadan is soon to be upon us. And just like any important guest, we have to prepare for it. And we have to prepare for it spiritually and psychologically. We have to understand why we are going to be fasting. And we have to understand what is it that you want to accomplish from fasting? So that we can reap the most benefits out of fasting. Fasting, brothers and sisters, is not to go hungry and thirsty during the day and gorge yourself at night. Fasting, brothers and sisters, is not to be hungry and thirsty during the day and work up an appetite for the evening. Fasting, brothers and sisters, is not to reverse the day and night. You sleep during the day and you eat at night. Fasting, brothers and sisters, is not to spend more money on food, but rather to spend more money on that spiritual dimension that you want to cultivate, is to address that charity towards God. That's what fasting is all about. Fasting, brothers and sisters, is not to fill the garbage cans with food that when we were hungry, we craved. And then when we put the first bite in our mouth, and then all of a sudden we are full. And then the next day that food does not look so good, that we throw it in the garbage can, and then while we are hungry and thirsty, we go to the market and buy more food. Brothers and sisters, this is a very, very serious thing. This is a very serious issue. We have a couple of weeks to prepare ourselves. We have a couple of weeks to convince ourselves and to clarify for our own selves what is it we want to accomplish from fasting. We have a few weeks to reflect on what we have done in the past and what went on in the past. Just last year alone, brothers and sisters, 2 of the local mosques here in Las Vegas spent more than $50,000 each on food to break fast. Brothers and sisters, this is a very serious issue. And it's not just here in this community. It's all over the world. It's all over the Muslim world. To the point where even NPR, and that was 7 years ago, when they announced the coming of Ramadan, they said exactly, don't think that Muslims go hungry in this month. They spend more money on food this month than the rest of the year. Brothers and sisters, I lived for 3 years in the Gulf state of United Arab Emirates. They have what they call al-khaymat al-Ramadaniyah. They erect big tents during the month of Ramadan. They call them khaymat, tents of Ramadan. You erect them for partying and eating at night. I was invited to iftars where food to feed 10,000 people is served for 200 people. Where people move the buffet from the buffet table to their own table, and then everything ends up in the garbage can. That's not the spirit of Ramadan. That's not the zuhd, that asceticism element that's needed in human life. That's not what it is. And if you read the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have warned us, using the example of people before us who did the same thing, who took something sacred and played with it. During the months of Ramadan, brothers and sisters, our mothers and wives, they are forced to spend the whole day in the kitchen to make delicacies that people, like to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the feast, the Eid al-Fitr. We call it the Eid al-Fitr. What is an Eid? I mean, here, we have an Eid where you celebrate, when you have a feast, when you break the fast and then enjoy, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. It's not, fasting is not called the Eid. To have that one every night. Brothers and sisters, it is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so merciful. And He gives us so many opportunities. So many opportunities. So many opportunities. And fasting is one of them. Let's not waste it. The last Ramadan, I know you were people who were with us. And they are not now. And even this Ramadan, we don't know who's going to be here and who's not. Brothers and sisters, I invite myself and you during the 3 weeks coming to really, really prepare for Ramadan so we can reap out the most benefit out of it. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased on how we have performed our fasting. Last year, brothers and sisters, 50,000, 100,000 in just 2 masjids. Multiply that by the whole magnitude of the Muslim world. And I'm not kidding. The study that was mentioned in NPR said that Morocco is spent 35% more money on Ramadan. And if you close your eyes and picture, you're back home, if you are from overseas, you will see, what happened, Brothers and sisters, let's go back to what the intent of fasting is, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed to us. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. You're doing the opposite. You go to a bath, you take a shower to cleanse. You don't go to a shower and pour charcoal and oil and dirty stuff on you. That's not the purpose. You get out of the shower to clean yourself. The same thing for Ramadan. Fasting is to experience az-zuhd, asceticism, is to open that spiritual window, to develop that spiritual dimension. It's not to encourage your carnal soul, your carnal desires. Because, seriously, if you are fasting to develop a craving, that's the opposite of what you are supposed to do. You are just, it's a good exercise of developing an appetite. You go without food and drink, and then all of a sudden you're ready for that huge banquet to gorge yourself until you cannot move. Brothers and sisters, it's a very serious matter. Let's take it seriously. Let's prepare ourselves to experience some zuhd in this Ramadan, to experience some attitude in this Ramadan, to enjoy one another, to do good. Let's this Ramadan, instead of spending food that goes in garbage, or food that will make us overweight at the end of Ramadan, or food that prevents us